So I want you to think for a second about the group you would absolutely die for.
Yeah.
Like your family or maybe your deepest community or even your country.
Right, your people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your people. Now, what if the very loyalty that, makes you willing to protect them, what if that is exactly what puts them in the greatest danger?
I mean, it is a really profound paradox. Because we are, like, literally wired to draw a circle around our people and just defend that space at all costs.
We are.
But the source material we're looking at today suggests that this instinct, if it's left unchecked, it might actually be the root of our most catastrophic systemic failures.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this deep dive is all about today. We're centering on this really fascinating philosophical excerpt from a text called Rev PS. And it's this deeply analytical look at human identity, the concept of loyalty, and those literal and metaphorical circles we draw around ourselves, right?
Yeah, the boundaries we set.
It's exactly. We're going to explore how our definition of us basically shapes our entire reality and, how redefining that boundary might be the ultimate key to human progress.
Which is a massive claim.
It is. But to understand how to, expand that definition, I feel like we first have to look at the comfort and, honestly, the function of our smallest circles.
Yeah.
Because they're there for a reason.
Oh, absolutely. And the author of the Rev PS excerpt is very deliberate in identifying these foundational groups.
Right.
They list, family, which is obviously built on shared blood, a shared home, a name, a history.
Yeah.
But they also list tribe, culture, nation, race, political party, religion, community, and specific social movements.
It's a broad list.
It is. But these aren't just like arbitrary labels we slap on ourselves for convenience. Sociologically and psychologically, these groups act as vital sense-making structures.
Right.
They essentially provide the cognitive scaffolding for a human life.
I mean, they drastically reduce our cognitive load, right?
Yeah.
Like if you align with a specific political party or a religious tradition, you don't have to wake up every single morning and reconstruct your entire moral framework from scratch.
Right, exactly. You'd be exhausted.
You would. The group gives you direction. It gives you confidence and meaning. It dictates your sense of responsibility. Like if you feel you belong to a nation, you inherently work for the progress of that nation. If you belong to a family, you seek the good of that family.
And the text explicitly validates this, which I think is so important. It doesn't villainize these groups. It states there is, quote, nothing wrong with loving these smaller wholes.
Yeah, it calls the family sacred, actually.
Exactly. It says culture carries memory, which highlights how these groups transmit, human experience across generations. A nation gives structure, and religion awakens moral purpose.
So it's not saying we shouldn't have them.
Not at all. A person completely untethered from any of these contexts would just be adrift. You'd be without history or framework. The text totally recognizes that human beings require these structures just to function.
While I was reading through the sources for this, the image that just kept coming to my mind to describe this was a set of Russian Matryoshka dolls.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
You know those wooden nesting dolls that stack really tightly inside one another? Well, we all basically start out our lives inside the smallest, most tightly enclosed doll. That is our immediate family, and it feels incredibly safe in there.
Right, it's cozy.
Super cozy, it's thick wood, it's protective, it shields us from the absolute chaos of the outside world.
The structural nature of a nesting doll is just a perfect parallel here, honestly, because it provides a secure boundary, but the physical reality of being inside that smallest doll is that it's also dark in there.
Yeah.
You cannot see the rest of the room. You're completely blind to the larger environment because the very walls that protect you are also restricting your vision.
Wow, yeah. And as we grow, we might step into the next doll, right? Like our local community, our culture, our political affiliation.
You get a little more room.
Right, we get a little more room to breathe. But we are still enclosed. We are still wrapped in these distinct protective layers that limit our field of view.
And if that limited field of view is a feature of the small doll, the danger arises when we refuse to acknowledge the larger dolls encompassing the one we currently occupy.
Which brings us to the trap.
Yes. The text refers to this specific danger as the trap of partial loyalty.
A trap of partial loyalty. So, I mean, that implies that loyalty itself isn't the problem, but rather the narrow scope of it.
Exactly. The text issues this warning that every smaller whole is still inside a greater whole. There is no family that exists outside of humanity.
Right.
There's no nation that exists outside the earth. There's no political identity that stands apart from the broader society.
Right, they're all nested.
They're all nested. The trap springs when our sense of belonging becomes so narrow and so defensive that we mistake our partial loyalty for righteousness.
Okay, I need to play devil's advocate here for a second, just looking at this from a purely evolutionary standpoint.
Go for it.
Because we are biologically hardwired to protect our own first. Like, if there's a threat, my instinct isn't to sit back and consider the abstract universal whole of humanity.
Of course not.
My nervous system is screaming at me to protect my kid, my sibling, or my immediate tribe. We literally evolved to survive in small groups fighting for scarce resources. So how does the text reconcile this intense biological imperative with the idea that protecting our own is somehow a trap?
It's a great question, and the text addresses that biological friction by introducing this concept of, quote, unconsciously damaging the greater whole.
Okay.
The trap isn't the love for your family or your nation. That's natural. The trap is triggered when your passion for your group's advancement actively harms the larger ecosystem that your group actually relies on to survive. In sociology and economics, we often see this play out as the tragedy of the commons.
Right, where individuals act in their own rational self-interest. But by doing so, they end up depleting a shared resource, which eventually ruins it for all of them.
Exactly. Think of a shared pasture.
Okay.
If I want to protect my family and ensure our prosperity, my partial loyalty dictates that I put as many of my own cattle on that pasture as possible.
Right, you're being a good provider.
I'm being a great provider. I feel totally righteous in my actions because I'm prioritizing my family's survival. But if every family does that out of partial loyalty, what happens?
The pasture is overgrazed.
The pasture is completely overgrazed, the grass dies, the soil erodes, and eventually everyone's cattle starve, including mine. I have unconsciously damaged the greater whole.
Man. So the biological instinct to protect the small doll literally ends up setting fire to the big doll. And if the big doll burns down, the small doll inside it is just reduced to ashes anyway?
Yes, and we see this translated into modern issues everywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if loyalty to a specific national economy causes a population to champion policies that irreversibly damage the Earth's climate, that nation is destroying the very biosphere it requires to exist.
Self-defeating.
Totally. When we are trapped in partial loyalty, we defend our group even when truth is calling us higher. We protect our own comfort while ignoring the pain of others, failing to realize that a diseased superstructure will inevitably collapse on us.
And we feel righteous doing it because we are fighting so intensely for a specific team or political party or whatever. But it is a fragmented righteousness.
That's a good way to put it.
It's a righteousness that actually generates systemic destruction. But if our evolutionary instinct to protect the small doll inevitably risks burning down the big doll, we're left with a massive problem here.
We are.
Because we can't just abandon our survival instincts. So what mechanism does the text offer to actually align our biology with like a higher sustainable consciousness?
Well, the alternative the text presents is shifting our baseline of belonging. It essentially calls us to expand our identity to what it capitalizes as all of life.
Belonging to all of life.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, on the surface, that sounds like a beautiful poetic concept.
Yeah.
But practically, it often feels like a massive burden. When we're told we need to care about all of humanity or the entire planet, it can feel like someone just handed us a 1,000-pound backpack of moral obligation.
Oh, yeah. It usually leads straight to compassion fatigue.
Exactly. Compassion fatigue. So how is it different?
That fatigue happens when we try to care for the universe using the energy of the small doll.
Oh, interesting.
Right. We try to frantically apply our tribal defensive energy to a global scale, and it just burns us out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the text describes this shift not as an added burden, but as an awakening. When you recognize your ultimate belonging to all of life, your energy actually becomes larger, your vision widens.
The text uses this phrase that I really want to break down. It talks about becoming a conscious conduit of universal advancement.
Yes, a conscious conduit.
How does a person actually function as a conduit in this context? Like, what does that look like?
Operating as a conduit means you stop generating your own tribal friction. You stop trying to force the world to conform to the preferences of your small circle.
Okay.
Instead, you allow a broader, systems-level empathy to pass through you into your community. You shift from asking, how do I make my group win, to asking, how do I uplift the underlying system that sustains us all?
And to bring this out of the abstract, the author actually provides a diagnostic tool, right? 3 specific questions to test if you are acting out of partial loyalty or acting as a conduit for all of life.
Yes, the 3 questions are crucial.
So number 1, does my action heal or harm?
Mm.
Number 2, does it divide or restore? And number 3, does it serve only my group or does it contribute to the greater harmony of existence?
And applying those questions to a concrete, everyday scenario reveals how radically this shift alters our behavior.
Give me an example.
Imagine a heated local town hall meeting.
So, oh boy. Okay.
The town is debating a new zoning law. There's a proposal to build an affordable housing complex near a very affluent, established neighborhood.
A classic scenario, just absolutely ripe for tribal friction.
Exactly.
The residents of the affluent neighborhood are going to operate from partial loyalty. Their small doll is their property value, their immediate street, their specific aesthetic. They will show up to that town hall feeling completely righteous in their anger, ready to fight the proposal tooth and nail.
They're acting on that evolutionary instinct to protect their own resources. But let's run their reaction through the 3 diagnostic questions.
Okay, let's do it.
Does standing at a microphone screaming at the town council heal or harm the community fabric?
It clearly harms it.
Right. Does fighting to keep lower-income families out of their zip code divide or restore?
It inherently divides.
Does it serve only their group or the greater harmony?
It obviously only serves their property values, while completely ignoring the severe housing crisis affecting the larger town.
Exactly. But if one of those residents decided to operate as a conscious conduit of universal advancement, their entire approach to that meeting would have to change.
How so?
They wouldn't necessarily ignore the legitimate concerns about infrastructure or traffic.
Right, because those are real issues.
Right. But their goal wouldn't be to defeat the other side. They would look for a solution that restores. Maybe they advocate for the housing complex, but volunteer to help integrate the new community spaces so that both the old and new residents benefit.
So they look for the health of the entire town, recognizing that, like, an affluent neighborhood surrounded by a collapsing, impoverished city isn't actually safe or sustainable anyway.
Bingo. By serving the whole, they're ultimately securing a better, more stable environment for their own family.
Okay. But if I am serving all of life, if I'm prioritizing the health of the entire town over my specific street, it raises a really difficult question about identity. Does belonging to the universe mean I belong to nothing in particular? Like, if my loyalty isn't fiercely dedicated to my own family or my own country above all others, it feels like my identity just gets watered down into this vague, generic globalism.
Yeah, that is probably the most common fear associated with expanding our circles. The fear of losing our roots.
Yeah.
But the text explicitly resolves this. It states clearly that in serving all of life, you do not lose your family, your tribe, your nation, or your faith.
But if I don't lose them, but my relationship to them fundamentally changes because I'm no longer defending them at the expense of others, they must have to adapt, right?
They do adapt, and the text calls this adaptation elevation. You elevate them into their highest truth.
The paradox of elevation. I was trying to find a way to map this out while reading.
Yeah.
And the clearest analogy I could come up with is a musician playing in a symphony orchestra.
Oh, that is a highly functional way to visualize it. Let's unpack the acoustics of that.
Okay, so imagine you play the cello, right?
Mhm.
That cello represents your specific identity, your family, your culture, your nation. If you are trapped in partial loyalty, you're operating from a place of fear.
You're afraid you won't be heard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You fear the cello won't be heard. You lack trust in the conductor. You lack trust in the rest of the orchestra. So you decide the only way to protect your instrument is to play louder and louder. You try to drown out the violins, the woodwinds, the brass. You are fiercely protecting your instrument, but you are completely destroying the music.
You are unconsciously damaging the symphony that your instrument requires to have any meaningful purpose.
Yes.
Because a cello playing aggressively over every other instrument isn't making music, it's just making noise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you realize your ultimate belonging is to the entire orchestra, when you step into all of life, you don't smash your cello.
No, of course not.
You don't hand it back and say, I guess I just won't play anything. I'll just appreciate the music. And you don't suddenly try to play the flute and the timpani at the same time.
Right.
You keep playing your specific cello. You hold on to your family, your culture, your nation. But you change how you play. You play your notes in a way that serves the harmony of the entire piece.
You elevate the cello into its highest truth. because its highest truth was never to be the loudest object in the room. Its highest truth is to be an indispensable, perfectly pitched component of a grander masterpiece.
And by giving up the need to dominate the room, you actually become a far better musician. Your relationship to your own instrument improves.
That's beautifully put. Translated back to our political and social realities, when you view your nation or your religion through the lens of the entire universe, you become a better citizen and a more faithful believer.
Wow.
The author encapsulates this by saying, your service becomes greater than identity.
Meaning you stop enabling the worst impulses of your group out of blind tribal loyalty.
Exactly. If you truly want what is best for your political party, you stop defending its corrupt or divisive tactics just because it's your team. You demand higher truth from it. If you want what is best for your family, you don't teach your children to hoard resources and fear outsiders. You raise them to be individuals who heal the communities they enter. You elevate your family's legacy.
Because true progress for the part can only happen in harmony with the whole. A nation that progresses by, strip mining the planet isn't progressing. It is literally digging its own grave just slightly faster than its neighbors.
Yes. The shift from the small nesting doll to the recognition of the grander system completely changes the baseline metric of success. Success is no longer, did my group win?
What is it then?
Success becomes, did my actions increase the health of the entire system?
It's just such a massive perspective shift. Because we started this journey by validating the comfort of our smallest circles, right? The biological, sociological need for family, tribe, and structure. These are the foundations that give us memory and moral purpose.
But then we confronted the trap. The illusion that partial loyalty is a virtue, when in reality, aggressively defending our small circle while ignoring the interconnected world inevitably leads to the tragedy of the commons.
It burns down the very ecosystem we rely on.
Exactly.
And we found the alternative in the concept of all of life, expanding our boundary of belonging, not by abandoning our identities, but by elevating them, by realizing we can keep our cello, but we must play it to serve the symphony.
It is a profound psychological pivot from defending a boundary to becoming a conduit for restoration.
It really is. And for you, listening to this right now, the challenge is to take this philosophy out of the abstract and force it into your actual lived reality today.
Absolutely.
Take those 3 diagnostic questions the text provided. Does it heal or harm? Does it divide or restore? Does it serve only my group, or does it contribute to the greater harmony of existence? Apply those questions to just one specific friction point in your life today. It could be how you draft a response to an infuriating email from a coworker.
We've all been there.
Right. Or it could be how you engage in a political debate at the dinner table. When your nervous system flares up and demands you protect your small doll, just pause. Run the response through the questions. See what happens to your stress levels and to the outcome of the situation when you consciously choose to act as a conduit rather than a tribal defender.
It requires immense practice to override our evolutionary programming. But every time you consciously choose a path that restores a system rather than divides a room, you are strengthening the psychological muscle of universal belonging.
Yeah. Which brings me to a final thought to carry with you long after this deep dive ends. The text promises that expanding our circle to all of life deepens our compassion and actually enlarges our energy. It's supposed to feel liberating to belong to humanity.
Right.
But look at the modern tools we interact with every single hour. Look at our social media feeds and digital algorithms. Technologically speaking, these platforms literally connect us to the entire globe. They have the architecture to be the ultimate symphony of universal belonging. Yet the sociology of these platforms is often engineered to do the exact opposite. They are monetized by triggering our evolutionary fears. They trap us in the smallest, angriest nesting dolls, constantly feeding us algorithmic outrage to keep us fiercely, blindly loyal to our most narrow identities.
It's the tragedy of the commons playing out in our digital ecosystem.
Exactly. So if our ultimate human progress relies on expanding our circle and elevating our loyalty, how must these digital spaces be fundamentally re-engineered? How do we build systems that profit from our universal harmony rather than monetizing our partial loyalties? Until we answer that, we have to consciously interrogate the spaces we inhabit, constantly asking ourselves, what is the whole you feel you truly belong to?